Dear Madam, by Stella Walpole Patterson. It was published 1956. Chapter 1. A pretty, serene-faced sister came to my hospital room and took me in a wheelchair to the cubicle where x-rays were to be taken of my injured leg. When the older sister in charge there had finished the task, she patted me kindly. "You have young legs," she said. She started something. That I should have anything young was astonishing, and my vanity was tickled, legs being a fetish in the land at this time. I began thinking of things I might do on my young legs. The result was that as soon as I was told that my leg was only bruised, I left the hospital and returned to my friend's home, where I was visiting, in the pretty little town of Arcata on the coast of Northern California. And the following morning I sat in a big, comfortable chair, my bandaged right foot and leg propped up before me, staring at a calendar on the wall. It was the 14th of April, a day remarkable for one reason only. It was my birthday. I was 80 years old. In my youth, I thought that any woman who had lived to be 80 must be in her second childhood, or at least tottering on the edge of the grave. But I always felt young. And lately, I've had to be pretty careful not to act as young as I felt. Of course, I knew that some of my friends spoke of me as old Mrs. Patterson, and marveled at the way I hung on to life, the dull, just waiting sort of life of an old woman, as they saw it. My friends were a charming group, but the most intelligent of friends are likely to think everything is over for a woman of 80. I might have agreed with them indefinitely if I hadn't, the month before, left my little home in San Francisco and come up here to visit my friend in Arcata. One day I accompanied a group of people on a picnic in the Klamath Forest and tripped over a wire. My legs seemed to be quite badly hurt, and my alarmed friends rushed me to the hospital. The injury was actually unimportant, as the x-ray showed. Now, back in my friend's house, I had time to think. I began by considering what I might do on my young legs. Why be sticking around, waiting to be carried out feet first, when I could be stepping out like a young thing, having fun in the land of the living? First of all, I decided I wanted freedom. Freedom to do just as I pleased, wear my hair in a tight bitty knot, my skirts too long, my shoes too large and too flat. I wanted to stoop if I wanted to, without having someone say, "Dear, it makes you look so old to stoop," or "Darling, don't wrinkle your nose and peer around, it makes you look so quaint," or "Don't you think you should reduce 20 or 30 pounds?" A plan began to formulate in my mind. I determined to embark on an adventure of living alone at 80. I would do this in a cabin I had bought 2 years before as part of an investment in a placer mining claim in the mountains overlooking the Klamath River, about 100 miles from a railroad. I and 3 of my friends who knew no more about placer mining than I did, which was nothing whatever, bought adjoining claims. I had done nothing more about the mine except to make sure the assessment work required by law was done each year, the 1st of July being the legal deadline. The state of California said that unless $100 worth of improvements were made each year on every mining claim, that claim was forfeited and someone else could take possession of it. I had placed this matter of assessment work on my claim in the capable hands of a reliable young man and his partner who owned and worked placer claims adjacent to mine. Each time July rolled around, they had fulfilled their contract with me, sent a proper report to the California State Bureau of Mines. In short, they took care of everything. What my friends did about their assessment work I did not know, as they had moved to distant places and I had lost track of them. Actually, there was no valid reason for my going to live on my claim, but I had to have some excuse other than my desire for freedom to do as I please, and an insistent longing to follow the beckoning finger of adventure before it was too late. And I have learned that if you say you have to do even the maddest thing for business reasons, people will nod in agreement while you say you're doing it for no reason on earth except that you want to. Impassioned objections will be voiced. I refused to face the fact that when I had visited my cabin for the first and last time 2 years before, I was told that my nearest neighbor, an eccentric character, lived a mile and a half away. The young men who took care of my claim had a cabin on a lake 5 miles distant and drove back and forth to work every day. How wonderful would it be, I thought, to do exactly as I pleased, see no one for days at a time, maybe even weeks. I would try it for a year, I promised myself bravely. Then if I didn't like it, I could return to my cushioned, old ladyish life in the San Francisco under the lovingly solicitous eyes of relatives and friends. Soon my leg was usable again. Then I became as busy as an old hen digging out sprouting seeds from a garden. And speaking of gardens, one of the principal items of my plan was growing of flowers in a garden made with my own hands. This had been a secretly cherished ambition since my childhood, when I had grown sickly radishes in a corner of the family garden that even the old hens refused to eat. With the thought of that flower garden mushrooming in my mind, I walked the 2 blocks to the post office, hardly limping at all by this time. There I bought 20 postcards. Standing at the high, ink-marred desk, I wrote 10 requests for seed catalogs to as many firms. The rest of the postcards I sent to close relatives and friends, telling them as casually as possible what I was about to do. I stood for several minutes chewing the stub of my pencil. Not for me, those unpredictable post office pens. Apparently I was deep in thought, but actually I was just plain stumped. What address should I give all these people? What was the name of the post office nearest to my cabin? I decided it must be Happy Camp. No, I didn't make up that name. You can find it on any good map of California. I scrawled Happy Camp on the postcards and dropped them in the mail slot. Then I went blissfully out to buy groceries at one of the big general merchandise stores in town. They caught me coming and they caught me going in that final store. As I went in, I filled a carton with various items from the grocery shelves. As I turned to go out, I saw a whole department given over to seeds and bulbs. Why wait to hear from the seed companies? I could supplement my supply of seeds from them later. I went on a buying spree that left my purse as flat as the proverbial pancake. There were stands and stands displaying bright-colored little packages of seed and trays of plump bulbs. I scooped the trays bare and started in on the seed packages. Nothing could stop me, not even the disapproving looks of the young clerk who followed me about apprehensively. I bought everything from hyacinth to Dutch iris bulbs, and added a miscellaneous collection of little knobby things that I had no name for. Each bulb was concentrated youth that turned my soul topsy-turvy. I rifled the flower seed stands, buying everything from a baby's breath to castor beans. I also bought 2 pairs of garden gloves, a floppy bright green garden hat, a flamingo pink garden smock, a pair of knee pads, and several small gadgets I saw in the showcase, but didn't stop to figure out just what they should be used for. I was a little troubled when I saw the size of my box of garden supplies. It was a good 4 times as large as my box of groceries. Well, nothing I could do about that now, as all my money was gone except what was required for my bus ticket. I packed my suitcase, put on a discreet amount of powder, lipstick, and rouge, and a very becoming hat with a veil, all of which made me look younger than I am. Particularly the mesh veil that I had over my hat and swathed around my throat, concealing nicely its wintry look. Saying goodbye to my friend, I took a taxi to the bus station, where I assembled my belongings and bought a ticket to Willow Creek, thereby sealing my fate. At Willow Creek, I would catch a mail stage, which would take me to my cabin. I boarded a small local bus and traveled 35 miles inland through precipitous tree-covered mountains to the hamlet of Willow Creek. There I found Tom, the driver of the mail truck, who would, I hoped, carry me safely to my destination. Tom eyed me with patient, disinterested tolerance. Carrying mail was his business, not carrying passengers. However, his manner implied he couldn't leave me stranded, so what couldn't be cured must be endured. He opened the door of the mail truck and I climbed in. We were rather crowded on the seat, what with 20 or 30 small canvas mail bags piled between us. We chugged off in a general northerly direction through gentle rain that turned the trunks of the madrone trees to glistening copper. Shreds of misty clouds drifted upward along the tree-clad mountain slopes that closely hemmed us in on either side, bent on joining their companions in the gray, weeping sky. Yet it was not a sad day. Dogwoods gleamed white in the forest. Wild roses and purple lilacs bloomed by the roadside. White azaleas and ferns draped the banks. Tiny waterfalls cascaded down the slopes, gurgling through pipes under the narrow one-way road, and went dashing on their way down the mountain. It was a beautiful day, with new charms appearing at every turn of the road, and there were plenty of turns as we followed the contours of the wild Siskiyou Mountains. At long intervals, I glimpsed the outline of a house back from the road, half hidden among crowding firs, oaks, and maples. But more often, the only visible signs of human habitation was a structure the size of a doghouse set on a pole by the side of the road. These were mailboxes. As we passed them with unslackened speed, Tom would throw a mail sack inside. I waited, filled with suspense, thinking each time that he would surely miss, but he never did. And no wonder. Tom told me that he had been driving this route from Happy Camp to Willow Creek and back again every day except holidays and Sundays for 15 years. We passed through the Hoopa Indian Reservation, where the Indians are not required to stay and where as many whites as Indians live. Arriving at the little town of Hoopa, Tom drew up before the post office, took a sack of mail inside. That little chore done, Tom threw some more mail bags on the seat beside me and climbed in. "Hungry?" he asked. "I sure am." "We'll stop at the Oaks Cafe," he said, jerking his thumb in the direction of a tiny restaurant bearing the simple sign, "Eats." In another moment we were there. I clambered down, and Tom pulled across the street to a gas station. Inside I perched on a stool. A good-looking Hoopa Indian girl in a smart, crisp waitress's uniform brought me a hamburger and coffee. Tom came in, fitted his long legs under the counter, and ordered a hamburger, which he consumed in silence. Tom, I began to discover, did not indulge in idle chatter. I finished before Tom did and climbed into the truck to wait for him. We left Hoopa and came to Wagepeck, where the beautiful Trinity River pours into the mighty Klamath. There we turned northeast, and from then on we're scarcely ever out of sight of that great stream. Once in a while we paused briefly at a little white painted dry goods box of a building labeled with the imposing sign United States Post Office, standing in a niche carved out of the mountain in the forest. Finally, at Blue Nose Bridge, we crossed the hurrying, tossing river and proceeded up its left bank. Soon Tom stopped at the foot of the trail that led to my cabin, dimly visible in the trees 50 feet above us. He hopped off the truck and had my baggage out of the back in a jiffy. Then he politely pushed me out of his way, got back under the wheel, and disappeared around one of the innumerable curves. I drew a deep breath of relief. The bottom of the canyon lay in deep shadow. Evening had come. I gazed at the mound of baggage and boxes that had to be carried up the steep trail to my shack and sobered up. I had been feeling pretty young and gay all day. Now I felt as old as Methuselah. There was work ahead, and no one but me to do it.